Today on Comicstorian, we're going to look at the future of Spider-Man 2099. This is Comicstorian. I take comic books, I break them down into a synopsis, I cut out all the fluff, the extra stuff, and tell you the bare bones plot. The point of this is to allow you to know what is going on in the world of comic books, but we leave enough out that you can go out and buy these issues yourself, adding them to your collection if you choose to. All alterations to the panel, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we're going to be picking up where we left off with Spider-Man 2099 as we are coming to its inevitable conclusion. At this point in the story, Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, is running the Alchemex company, which is a massively rich and massively invested in so many things around the world company that basically he has unlimited power at the moment. We're going to learn about New Atlantis, we're going to learn about Venom, and we're going to learn a little bit more about the origins of Spider-Man, so I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get into Spider-Man 2099, 42, 43, and 44. After finally kicking out Tyler Stone and taking control of Alchemex, Miguel is still getting used to being in charge. Heads of departments flood his office, demanding things and asking for leeway, but Miguel is droning out a bit too much, until finally he sighs, standing on his desk, everyone looking at him in shock, and he begins to pat each of them on the head. "Duck, duck, duck, goose!" he shouts, but they just look at him dumbstruck. "I'm tired of playing your game, so I picked a new one," he says simply as he gets down, and he finally ushers them out of the office. "I'll review your requests and address your concerns, but in my own way, in my own time. Now, shoo!" he shouts at them. He sighs as they leave, tapping a button on the phone and getting personnel. He asks where the new secretary that he ordered is, and they tell him that she should be there in a second. The door slides open, revealing a little old lady. She walks across the room, buttoning Miguel's shirt to the top and noting that he'll catch his death of a cold. He smiles at her, offering her a seat. "I'll be right with you," he says, a smile still plastered on his face as he taps the phone again and gets personnel. "Get me someone else. Anyone else," he hisses into the phone before hanging up. Unknown to Miguel, the perfect secretary just walked in though. Downtown, Raph stands in the window of Casey's apartment, motioning her over. "All of my years in downtown, I've never seen anything like that," he tells her, and she comes to the window and they both marvel at the sight of the workers' union marching across the street. "Wonder where they're going," Casey says, noting that Balru, a member of the Thorites, is marching out in front. Meanwhile, out in the city, Miguel is being driven to Zena's apartment, but the car suddenly is stopped by a large amount of traffic and this marching. Eventually, he steps out of the car. "Bert, you head back, I'll walk the rest of the way," he tells him, and in a short time, he's swinging through the city as Spider-Man quickly arriving at Zena's. Jack answers him at the door, explaining that Zena isn't there, that she's left and isn't sure when she's coming back, and Miguel stands in the apartment in shock, having wanted to offer Zena a job at Alchemex. He returns to his office where he is once again bombarded by the heads of departments, but he walks past them, ignoring their questions, and they all begin to grumble, stating that they don't have to put up with him ignoring them. "I believe Mr. O'Hara wanted you to leave," a voice tells them, and they turn demanding to know who the woman is. "His new secretary. Now please leave, we'll make appointments tomorrow, that's all," she tells them, and they continue to argue. But Conchetta pulls out a pistol, aiming it gently at their heads. In his office, Miguel is sitting at his desk, and when he stands, he realizes that his waiting room has become very quiet. He steps outside, and his eyes widen as his mother is sitting at the secretary's desk. "What's your first order, boss?" she says with a very serious face. Outside, the protesters are marching, and they've now reached Alchemex, cheering Baru's name. Inside, Miguel is arguing with his mother, telling her that she can't be his secretary. "You need me. I'm the perfect barrier between you and the outside world. Besides, we're in this together," she tells him, and he looks at her in shock, asking what she means. "Because I shot Tyler Stone, and you wouldn't be in charge if it wasn't for me," she tells him. Miguel stares at her in shock as she explains that she finally had to take down Stone, that he is evil incarnate and she didn't want to see Dana get hurt. "I just wish I'd been on time." Miguel turns away, heading up to the roof so that he can look out on the city and think, and he looks down at the front of the building, seeing the large gathering. He quickly swings down as Spider-Man, dropping in on the crowd. "Who's in charge?" "I'm Baru, and we seek Miguel O'Hara." "What's this about, Baru?" Spider-Man asks, and Baru nods, explaining that they are still the working class of the city. They have toiled away under Tyler Stone and Alchemex and the government. "The wheel has turned and we demand our due." Spider-Man looks around at the gathering. "By a show of force, why not send a single rep?" Baru shakes his head, explaining that the representative was ignored by O'Hara along with others. Spider-Man drops down, explaining that he can speak with O'Hara, but sometimes a show of force does make matters worse. True, but sometimes it makes the point. Baru says, removing his sunglasses and rushing at Spider-Man. Spider-Man leaps over his head, allowing him to bust through the streetlight. But Baru gets up fast, grabbing Spider-Man by the foot, throwing him to the ground, and he leaps up on top of him as Spider-Man kicks him off. "I'm warning you!" Spider-Man shouts, and Baru nods, revealing fangs and his nails growing into claws. "I'll consider myself warned," he growls, leaping again, but Spider-Man kicks him away, and Baru is up again, knocking Spider-Man away, slamming him into a wall. Spidey dodges the blow, kicking the man in the face, shooting webbing at him. He finally leaps away, swinging to safety, not wishing to fight anymore. "So you turn and flee to a superior. Fine, the devil takes you." Baru shouts after him, and then he turns back to Alchemax, with the security officers having already rushed out the door. But they stop as Conchetta pushes past them. "One side, out of my way," she shouts before pointing at Baru. "You, word is you want to speak to Miguel O'Hara," she says, and Baru looks her up and down for a moment. "Leave the street and get out of my way, you dumpy gnome." But Conchetta merely slaps him across the face, ordering him to watch his mouth. Baru growls for a moment before he bursts out laughing. "Woman, you are amusing," he says, with Miguel rushing outside to see his mother standing there with her tablet out. "So, Thursday then, morning or afternoon?" she asks, and Baru nods his head along with her. "Mornings are no good. Parent-teacher conferences. I need the afternoon," he says, and she nods, booking him for Thursday at 3. He thanks her, turning back to the gathering. "The march is over! Our point has been made!" And the crowd disperses, with Miguel stepping over to watch his mother dumbfounded. "Now about vacation days, son." Meanwhile, elsewhere, a series of underwater bases were destroyed. And floating to the surface of the ocean are the debris from those bases, with bodies floating up around them. One of the bodies suddenly begins to sit up, gasping for breath, shocked to be alive, and he looks up to see Spider-Man lowering himself on a web line from an Alchemax hovercraft. "It's okay, I got it under control, no need to panic," Spidey shouts as he reaches for the man, and he grabs the guy as a shark fin appears in the water, coming dangerously close. "Could you have cut it any closer?" the soldier shouts, and Spider-Man tries to retort, but a massive shark leaps out of the water, cutting through his web line with its sharp teeth. They both tumble into the water. Spider-Man is moving fast, using his enhanced vision to cut through the murk of the water and avoid the shark's attacks. He turns slightly, seeing a blue-skinned man swimming towards him rapidly, but Spider-Man grabs a hold of the shark, taking a chunk out of it with his talons. He releases it as blood begins to fill the water, attracting more of the sea creatures. Pushing towards the surface, he finds the soldier still waiting for him, and he grabs them, shooting out another web line, yanking them both out of the water and towards the waiting hovercraft. He turns back to see the blue-skinned man break the surface of the ocean, glaring at them for a moment before disappearing. "What the shock?" Spider-Man whispers to himself as the hovercraft heads back towards the city. And Spider-Man asks the soldier what happened. "Miguel O'Hara sent you to see why we lost touch with New Atlantis. Then he sent me when we lost touch with you." The soldier nods, explaining that the New Atlantis was designed to be the next step of deep-sea exploration. That people would live outright in airtight cities while the undersea mutants did all the hard work in the ocean's depths. It was an ideal situation, as long as the concept of slavery didn't bother anyone. The soldier sighs, and he explains that the plan started to bother the mutants, and they began a rally under the man named Roman, an imitation of Namor the Submariner. He explains to Spider-Man that the mutants rose up under the command of Roman, and the Submariner led his forces against them. Those that fought back were killed. A handful were kept alive as experiments. The rest were allowed to leave with the understanding that any who tried to retake New Atlantis would be killed. Mr. Stone ordered a counter-offensive, and I was the only survivor, he says, looking up, asking Spider-Man what's going to happen next. "What do you think Mr. O'Hara is going to do?" Spider-Man shakes his head, looking out the window. "I'm not sure. I know he has a big meeting coming up. The overseas investors are concerned that the mutants will attack the US-Europe tunnel." He explains that he turns back to the soldier, explaining that they'll probably try to force the mutants to take control of New Atlantis back at Alchemax. "But that's not your concern," Spidey says, and the man glares at him, lashing out at him. "Actually, it is!" He rips open his suit, revealing the fish scales on his chest. "I told you the humans were experimented on, and we came to see the rightness of the mutants," he shouts, leaping in to attack Spider-Man. "Long live Atlantis! Long live the Submariner!" He shouts, and he rips the doors off the hovercraft, diving out, disappearing beneath the ocean waves. "Hey, I didn't give you an official answer. I was thinking off the top of my head," Spider-Man shouts after the soldier before hanging his head. "Great." The soldier returns to New Atlantis, going before their leader, the Submariner. "Let me guess. Alchemax will not let us go. They will continue to hammer us until we submit to their authority." And the man nods. That is certainly Spider-Man's impression, he says, and Roman nods, knowing that he must do what the legendary Namor did in the past, teach the surface world a lesson that they won't be forgetting. Back at Alchemex, Miguel stands before his heads of department, turning down the option to organize a strike force. I'm opening peace talks with them. But they're mutants! They're not even human! One of the generals shouts. Some of my best friends aren't exactly human. I feel obliged to treat them as something other than freaks. They're subaquatic, not subhuman. That is all, gentlemen. The generals continue to try and argue with him, but Conchetta enters the office. Gentlemen, I believe he said that is all. The S.H.I.E.L.D. officers immediately nod and head for the door, apologizing, and as Conchetta enters the office, reminding Miguel that Baru wants to speak about how the workers' needs are being met. Tell him I'll be there tomorrow, Miguel tells her, but she is shocked, reminding him that he should have Baru come to him. Do not give up the home advantage, she reminds him, but Miguel shakes his head. The last thing I want is to think about this place as home, he tells her. At the meeting, Baru and his men wait for Miguel to arrive in his limo, growing angry as the meeting goes closer without any sign of O'Hara, unaware that he swings nearby as Spider-Man. Soon, we'll be informed that he sends his regrets, that he wishes our meeting could have been worth his time. You know, you got a big chip on your shoulder. What happened? Did you fall on your head? Miguel calls out to them as he comes walking up, and Baru is shocked, asking about Miguel's limo. Limo seems pretentious, don't you think? Miguel asks as he extends his hand, and Baru smiles, taking it, welcoming Miguel to downtown. He tries to squeeze his hand tight, unaware of Miguel's enhanced strength, and he looks at the head of Alchemex strangely, aware that he isn't even hurting him. But the pissing contest is interrupted as water begins to splash on them. Odd, I thought it wasn't supposed to rain today, Baru notes, and when suddenly the entire area begins to shake, and they all look up in shock as a great wave begins to wash over downtown. Blast you, O'Hara! This is what you're doing, isn't it? Baru shouts, but Miguel is just as shocked. Mine! I'm here with you, big idiot! He shouts back, and everyone begins to move, with Baru ushering people into City Hall before he slams the door shut and the waves are smashing against it. Where's O'Hara? He shouts, but no one has seen him enter. Well, I hope he's in here, because if he's out there, he hasn't got a snowball's chance in hell. But Miguel is already running up the side of the building, having ditched his shoes to allow his talons to grip the concrete. He stops at the top, using his enhanced vision to stare at the approaching waves, trying to figure out what is causing the floods. But his eyes widen as he sees a massive whale-like creature standing on 2 feet, smashing everything that it can find. He quickly begins to charge as he sees the Submariner standing on that creature's back. We wished to be left to ourselves, but that was insufficient for you, Roman shouts as the creature continues the assault. But Spider-Man slams into him from behind, and they both fall off the creature, plummeting into the waters below. Spider-Man and Roman continue to fight as they plunge into the water, with Miguel becoming quickly aware of a giant sea monster's foot descending towards him. He grabs Roman, whirling around, throwing him away as he swims towards the surface. He breaks through the water, gasping for air, his eyes widening as he sees the great horn that Roman the Submariner has used to control the sea monster. But a green mutant sees the horn at the same time and begins to swim towards it, believing that he can move faster in the water than Spider-Man. But a web line snaps out, yanking the horn towards the wall crawler. Earth-hugging simpleton! Return that at once! The mutant shouts as he lunges at Spider-Man, but Miguel twirls, kicking the mutant in the face, safe for the moment. He begins to swim as fast as possible for the sea creature. He leaps up onto the creature's back, hoping to use the horn to send it back into the ocean. Spider-Man! Roman shouts as he leaps out of the water, barreling towards our wall crawler. But Spider-Man weblines away, jumping clear of the Submariner, leaping into the monster's shoulder, pulling up his mask and blowing into it with all his breath. The creature roars in anger, forcing Miguel to cover his ears. Well, that wasn't it, he thinks to himself, but he keeps puffing into the horn, hoping one of the notes will ring true. Finally, the monster calms down and it turns, walking back towards the ocean, with the waters that flooded the city receding. Give me that horn, you surface man! Roman shouts, knocking Spider-Man from behind. He punches Spider-Man in the face, kicking out at him as he explains that no innocent would be harmed by their assault. But you all bear guilt. You know the whims of Alchemex. But Spider-Man leaps at him, biting him in the neck. Animal! Are you so desperate that you are reduced to... But then he becomes dizzy, swaying on his feet as the venom from Miguel's fangs moves through his body. Lucky for you, the effect is temporary. Unlucky for you. You really teed me off! Miguel snaps as he lashes out, knocking the Submariner away with one punch. But he whips out with a web line, snagging Roman's feet and pulling him back, tying him up quickly with webs. He then turns back to the ocean, watching as the massive monster begins to disappear beneath the waves. Dear Lord, what must the world have been like when those things wandered the earth? He thinks to himself. At Alchemex, Conchetta sits at her desk ordering security to find Miguel in the flood and bring him safely back to the building. She snaps at the security agent and ends the call, turning as Tyler's voice calls to her from the door. Making new friends as always, he notes snidely, and then he turns to her, memories of the assault that put him in the wheelchair coming back, and images of Conchetta shooting him in the chest. Of course. You. He hisses. Forgive me, I didn't recognize you without your pistol. He sneers at her, and she begins to deny the accusation, but Tyler waves her off, pointing out that he doesn't even need to ask dramatic questions about why she would shoot him. She stops arguing and turns away. I'm going into Miguel's office, and you better be gone by the time I come back, she snaps at Tyler. Later, Miguel is standing in the lab, looking at Roman in a protective tube. You will regret this, O'Hara! The mutant snarls as he hammers at the glass, and Miguel shakes his head, explaining that he wanted to negotiate with them, but they've given him no choice. You are to surrender New Atlantis property immediately, or else, he warns, and Miguel turns walking out of the lab, heading towards his office. The door slides open and his eyes widen as he sees his mother holding a blaster to Tyler's head. Not now, Miguel. Mother's in a conference, she says offhandedly. Tyler looks at his son, explaining that he came to speak to Miguel about handing off Alchemex to him, asking him to reconsider. If you do not, I'll be forced to call the authorities on your mother's murder attempt on me. Conchetta's eyes narrow, the weapon not wavering as she warns Tyler that she'll inform the authorities about what Stone did to his former wife. Walk away. Let me end this, Miguel, she snaps. But the conversation is interrupted as alarms begin to blare throughout the building. The security sergeant appears via holo, informing Miguel that Roman has escaped Lab 27. Lab 27? That's also where we store the Venom symbiote! He gasps, but Roman has already burst out of the building, smashing through the window, landing on the street, his body now bonded with Venom 2099. Rue this day, Alchemex. Dread the future. We return to our ocean home. But someday, we will return to finish what we started. He shouts. Terrific. Miguel whispers as he watches the monster escape, but he turns back to his mother as she is saying farewell to Tyler, and he sighs again, shooting out a web, hanging the blaster from his mother's hand. She looks at him in shock. What was that? She gasps, and Tyler seems unfazed. A web line, my dear, not exactly unusual for Spider-Man. Is it, son? He says as he looks at Miguel, explaining that he's known since the beginning. Miguel opens fire, shooting several rounds through Tyler, but the blasts go through him and into the wall. Well, that's interesting. You're as ruthless as I could have hoped. He notes before disappearing, and Conchetta is angry as Tyler disappears, but Miguel points out that the man didn't cast a shadow, which is how he knew that he was a hologram. Conchetta walks to her son, now aware that he has been saving the city as Spider-Man this whole time, telling him that she is proud of him, and that she will try to become the mother that he deserves. Miguel smiles as he holds her close. What if we just take the day off and go out to dinner? As they walk out the building into the new day of the city, Miguel can't help but wonder about the future of the 2099 universe, about his brother Gabe, about the new Submariner, about Venom, the Goblin, and Tyler Stone. And he begins to wonder what the future will hold. And there you have it. We are one episode away from all of the Spider-Man 2099 stuff, which is kind of sad, because if you were paying attention there at the ending, they were basically setting up the new future of Spider-Man 2099. But the series was actually canceled in about 2 to 3 issues. So they're going to wrap up a bunch of the plot points to the best of their ability, and it's all over. And if you want to see that conclusion, join us next Wednesday. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you right here.